get the ball rolling. Let's get the ball rolling. Ayan. Let's go. Ayan na mga kameta. Kamusta kayo dyan? Kamusta po ang ano natin dyan? Ang kalagayan natin dyan. I hope folks are keeping warm and keeping dry. Medyo hindi maayos yung panahon. Kanina grabe yung traffic nga, no? Dahil dito sa pag-ulan. And kahapon pa lang nakita natin may mga announcements across different LGUs, local government units, ukol dito sa suspension of classes, no? So marami dyan nakatambay, nakatenga kagabi. Gising tayo hanggang mga 4-5 a.m. kagabi. Dami nakatenga dyan dun sa latest sa announcements ng mga LGUs. So kanina nung pumunta tayo sa TV5 studio, of course, abangan nyo yung interview namin sa the chiefs, no? Pinag-usapan po namin itong EDCA. So essentially a continuation of our discussion yesterday, no? As passionate, as honest, as forthcoming. And of course, I was glad to be joined by other, very veteran journalists, Ed Lingao, Robbie Lampao, the Ami, and then of course, Manny Mugato. So many good people. So we talked about a lot of operational issues, ano yung ambag ng mga iba't ibang military bases here and there. There's still more to discuss, God willing. Soon I'll be also discussing with some top military experts and specialists about the specifics ng EDCA, sa specifics ng mga operational implications ng mga ito. So abangan mga kameta, no? Abangan mga kameta. They may not necessarily come here, but they'll be more, God willing, likely sa mainstream media. So I'll update you guys on that. So don't worry, medyo busy tayo all over the place. We're trying to get as much information as possible to have a 360 degrees analysis of EDCA. Kasi sabi ko nga, ayoko ng simplistic, ayoko ng mga laos na explanation, stance. Ayoko yung partisan. Ayoko yung tatay school of diplomacy, geopolitics, kind of mababaw na analysis na pang barangay. Ayoko yung mga ganun, no? Gusto natin maayos, 360 degrees. Looking at the reality of the situation, the difficulty of the situation. So abangan niyo mga kameta. Now, obviously, kahapon din, isa sa mga trending was itong bashing sa Pulse Asia. As usual, ito na naman yung mga attack, Pulse Asia, yung mga ganon. Ang akin lang mga kameta, I think it's really time for us to have a healthy and mature and constructive and forward-looking analysis and understanding of the seeming enduring popularity of certain brand of leadership in Philippine politics. And in particular, let's try to understand why someone like Sara Duterte remains to be not only one of the most trusted, but the most trusted government official base sa latest Pulse Asia survey. By the way, this caption is from Rappler, alright? So, kudos sa Rappler for putting that. Ayan, bash na ako. Ayan, trolls attack in 1, 2, 3. Okay, medyo. No, seriously guys. Eto, pag-usapan natin ng mabuti yan. Kasi parati ko sinasabi mga kameta, yes, there were concerns about election anomalies. Particularly, I would say, no? At least, upstream pa lang pagdating sa vote buying, ang laki ng problema. We had 3 different vlogs mga kameta kung saan pinag-usapan natin pinag-usapan natin yung mga concerns naman dun sa downstream or midstream, meaning specifically yung transmission of votes. So the moment after the vote, whether the transmission had integrity, pinag-usapan natin yan mga kameta. So I'm not dismissive. I'm not dismissive of concerns about the integrity of our elections. Kaya nga nag-devote tayo ng 3 different vlogs, no? Very extensive. Akala nga nung iba dyan, pinaulit-ulit ko lang post. Hindi po. 3 different vlogs po yan looking at different aspects of dun sa transmission logs, dun sa concerns whether they got the right logs, dun sa concerns whether parang ang bilis naman daw yung transmission. So, please lang mga kameta, I try to be as open-minded, fair, and objective as possible. So, diniscuss natin yung issue na yan at balikan natin yan with more updates, more data and analysis on that. Ayaw natin ng Marites lang, ayaw natin ng Made in Marites. Alright? Hindi tayo nandito for the business of Made in Marites. Kausapin nyo na si Direk, Daryl Y, kung mga Marites mga gusto niyo. But if you want serious, objective, and constructive and forward-looking analysis, you're in the right place mga kameta. Speaking of the right place, of course, thank you so much dun sa mga nagko-contribute sa atin. So medyo unti-unti na pumapasok itong mga contributions dito para magkakaroon tayo ng in-studio vlogs, hopefully, God willing, in the coming months. I think we may have enough for at least one taping, affordable, just basic ones. Honestly, I'm very touched with people sending us even the humblest of amount. Literally, some of our friends, mga kameta, sent me something like literally piso. And to be honest, I appreciate that a lot. Because if piso is the best that some people can give, it's more than the best. It's more than good to me, right? Ang mahalaga para sa akin, mga kameta, is we send our love through the most humblest form of support. So I appreciate it, mga kameta. No matter how much no matter objectively what amount, that's not the point. What's important, mga kameta, is showing support. So yung effort pa lang to send us even piso or 2 pesos, I appreciate that, mga kameta. I really, really appreciate that. Na-hearten tayo dyan. So, thank you so much dun sa lahat ng mga sumusuporta sa atin. So, don't worry. Mamaya, baka may mga accounting team na ako, ipopost namin sa inyo yung renting rates. Para alam niyo naman, hindi tayo nagbibiro dito. Lahat ng sinasabi, totoo lang. So, thanks kay paring Mark Gambo. Nakatanong tayo sa may mga nahanap na tayo na medyo affordable studios na pwede na itan rent. So, God willing, perhaps we're putting together some amounts to have at least 2 or 3 studio interviews, podcasts by the before the end of second quarter, Q2 of this year, no? So nasa Q2 na tayo, di ba? Simula pa lang. So we hope before the end of Q2 we have 2 or 3 interviews. I really hope we can get progressive leaders there. I'm really looking forward to interviewing people like Vico Soto, for instance, among others. Sana dun sa studio. I'm hoping to also, God willing, we can organize some stuff with my good friends, with Adleloy, with sila Mark Gamboa, among others, in person. And let's see if maka-rent tayo ng place kung saan pwede magkaroon ng audience, even a few people here and there. Kinda ticket, but it's more like a charity just for fundraising, etc. If we can kind of put that to make sure na we can, accommodate as many people as we can without, breaching the capacity of the place at hindi makakaroon ng kaguluhan or something like that, of course. Yun nga yung mahirap, mga kameta. Pinag-usapan kasi natin politika, mga sensitive na issues. So please, we just want to make sure that everything is done maayos, as polite and civilized as possible. Yun lang. So thank you so much, mga kameta, lahat ng mga sumusuporta sa akin. Sa atin, actually, this is really not just about me. It's the project. It's what we're trying to do. Ako, tao lang ako, nagkakamali ako. Minsan I let my personal emotions or my personal frailties, to kind of cloud the judgment of some people and distract them from the content of my analysis. But as far as the content of our analysis is concerned, we always try to get it right. Now, let's go to the tale of the take. I mean, medyo UFC style analysis na ito, mga kameta. So, paano yan? Paano natin ma-explain yan, mga kameta? Effortless. Boom. Booyaka siya. Boom! Yan. Hindi lang majority, pero most trusted. Mas mataas pa kay Junior, ha? In fairness, mas mataas pa si Junior. So let's look at the numbers, mga kamit, na sandali lang. Let's get to that, and then let's go into the analysis, alright? So kahapon, sinan sa akin, syempre nandun tayo sa email list ng mga iba't ibang survey agencies, etc. So, directly nakikita natin once the numbers are in. So let's look at the numbers and data that are coming on before I give you the macro metadata, no? So mga kameta, ito po ang mga numbers na nakuha natin dahil dun sa Pulse Asia survey. Alright, so dito, okay, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., awareness and trust rating of top national officials. Yung surveys were conducted between 15th of March and 19th of March. Awareness, 100% kay Marcos Jr. Ewan ko na lang sa'yo kung hindi nyo kilala si Marcos Jr. Awareness, 100% kay Sara Duterte. Kay Miguel Zubiri, yung senador natin, mukhang hindi 100%. Mas mababa kay Martin Romualdez at 88% at super mababa naman sa Supreme Court Chief Justice kumpara sa iba at 66%. Although, I'm still surprised that more people than not actually know Justice Alexander Hesmundo, Supreme Court Chief Justice. So perhaps, there's a need for us to pay more attention also to Supreme Court and our justices, kasi mahirap pag-usapan na isang tunay na demokrasya kung wala tayong rule of law, walang appreciation ng judiciary, etc. Now, so tignan mo yung mga approval ratings, mga kameta. Ito. Okay. Boom! Big trust kay President Marcos Jr., 80%. Booyaka siya! Boom! Yan, napakagaling, oh. Pero may undecided na 15%. Wow. 5% lang daw ayaw kay Marcos Jr. Hindi silang tiwalang-tiwala. Alright. Okay. Not bad. 80%. Boom! Sara Duterte naman, 85%. 3% lang pala ang hindi inspired, ay hindi approving sa kanya. Wow, talagang. Sino kaya yung mga 3% na yan? Ito ba yung mga 3% na ayaw rin kay Tatay Digong na parating pinagtatawanan? 3% lang, 3%. Ayan tayo eh. Ayan tayo mga kameta. Let's get that. I just remember I had to pull out something else. Ito kasi yung interesting eh. Alright? Ito yung interesting. Here is where I'll get to you, no? Ang tinatawag ko na asymmetric accountability. Alright? Yung concept na asymmetric accountability. Pag-usapan natin ng mabuti yan, no? Mga kameta. Wait lang, ha? Yan. Boom, 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 booyakasha! Pag-usapan natin yan, mga kameta. Ayan. Alright. Wait lang, ha? Wait lang. So, yung general approval rating ay napakataas. Wow. Impressive. 80%. 85%. Kay Miguel Zubiri, 48% lang. Bakit kaya? 44 lang sa kay Romualdez, 39% naman kay Justice Hesmundo. So like, anong basis ulit for giving them, like what? Was there like a big Supreme Court ruling issue like that? And this is where, this is where the problem comes, mga kameta, with this approval, etc. Like, approval based on what? Kasi feel mo siya. Alright, so like, what are the major Supreme Court rulings that came out recently? And honestly, are our voters really, following them and appreciating the nuances and nitty-gritties of these rulings and how, you know what I'm saying? So this is where you see a lot of this is ethereal, right? A lot of this is ethereal. But a lot of this also, mga kameta, is honeymoon period. Now, first of all, let me give you an idea. So this is where I'm saying hindi healthy itong approach na every time mataas sila sa Pulse Asia, atakin mo yung Pulse Asia. Come on, guys. That's not a healthy way forward, alright? Maraming nasaktan dyan ng mga matitinong tao, mga people with utmost integrity that I can vouch for. It's not a healthy way. Now, first of all, let's put things into context, mga kameta. Alright? Una-una, mga kameta, nasa honeymoon period pa tayo. So expected na talaga mataas yung approval rating. So let me just give you an idea. Okay. Let's look at SWS survey, for instance, right? So if you look at SWS survey, mga kameta, look at the net satisfaction rating. Corazon Aquino was between plus 50 net approval to 70 net approval in her first year in office. Ramos comes in even stronger at close to 70 net approval, meaning pro and against. Pag sinama mo yan, net. Ramos comes even stronger at plus 70. ERAP comes at around 60. So ito all above 50 net approval rating when they come in their first year. Alright? So there's nothing really out of this world when our top officials have pretty high or majority approval rating in their first year in office. Alright? Again, just look at the numbers. Ang wala lang talagang honeymoon dyan, si Arroyo. At alam natin, because of the extraordinary circumstances, right? Not only yung EDSA situation, but also, mga kameta, including EDSA tres against Arroyo in favor of Estrada. But also, mga kameta, also in light of Hello Garci crisis that happened in 2004, right? So, if you look at it, really, it's just Arroyo who did not have very high approval. And then kay Pinoy, almost as high as Ramos at plus 60 almost. Tatay Digong also comes in at around almost plus 60. In fact, mas mataas pa si Corazon Aquino kaysa Duterte sa net approval rating when he comes in. Although Duterte, of course, finishes stronger than practically everyone, right? And that's what makes it interesting, right? Although you can again say that's sui generis, that was like pandemic time, I don't know, Tatay-style propaganda or fake news, disinformation, whatever. Okay? But mga kameta, mga kameta, ito ka talaga, alright? Ito yon, mga kameta. There's completely nothing super abnormal with having high majority-based approval rating in your first year in office. Alright? So, yung mga nagpapanik dyan, tapos ina-attack na lang yung pulsation, gano'n, I'm not sure that's a healthy way because if you have any basic appreciation of the data, of history, of the trend lines recently, you would realize that there's nothing special about it. It's just how we are. Honeymoon period. And sa Pilipinas, dahil tropical country tayo, ang haba ng honeymoon period natin, minsan tumatagal. In the case of Duterte, Tatay Digong, forever, right? So I'm not expecting Sara Duterte's numbers to go down significantly in the coming years. But I'm just saying, historically speaking, high approval ratings at this phase is completely normal, mga kameta. Completely normal. Alright? So yon, that's the first thing we have to keep in mind. That's number one, mga kameta. Number two is what I call asymmetric accountability. So we saw already that under Tatay Digong. Maraming hindi satisfied sa government's handling of the pandemic, but he still maintained high approval ratings himself. So kung may mali, sisisiin mo dun sa mga underlings, pero kung may tama, sa kanya pupunta yung credit, right? So it's very asymmetrical accountability that we have there. That's a peculiar anthropological political culture situation in the Philippines. Now, we see that clearly also in the case of the daughter, Sara Duterte. So for instance, if you look at it, there was a survey earlier na marami rin nag-raise ng eyebrows because nung pina-survey ang DepEd, for instance, very interesting, ang baba nung approval sa DepEd as an institution, right? Pero ang taas ng approval kay Sara. So like, blame the institution, not the leader. Alright? Which makes you think like, isn't a leader supposed to take responsibility? What's the commander-in-chief? Now, I'll explain to you more about it because, again, we see this trend line. Also with Bongbong Marcos, we see something very similar, what I call asymmetric. When things go right, or they think that things are going right, or whatever is right in the supposed wrong, all the credit goes to the leader on top. So clearly we have a situation of what Max Weber, the German sociologist, called charismatic leadership. The thing with charismatic leadership, I'm not necessarily charismatic tomato, but clearly they're operating from a charismatic leadership standpoint. The name Marcos, the name Duterte, it's the brand, all of that. Charismatic leaders are almost impervious to what political scientists call performance-based legitimacy. Performance-based meaning based on your actual objective performance. No. The charismatic leader is always above the fray in the eyes of the supporters, right? That's something very important to keep in mind, mga kameta. Again, this is a political culture psychology issue. So, kailangan natin tanong yung mga psychologists at yung mga sociologists about this, right? Kaya nga I called it, in fact, post-performance legitimacy politics in the case of the Philippines. It's a very, very, very interesting situation we have here in the Philippines, all right? Things go right, all credit goes to the top leader. Things go wrong or are not so right, all the blame goes to the underlings. It's a fascinating situation when you have leaders especially based on charismatic credentials, not necessarily objective credentials. So hindi maayos yung DepEd, para blame mo yung DepEd, pero hindi mo blame yung leader. Now, of course, the other argument would be, wait, di ba 1 year lang siya? Sure, pero hindi ba 6 years yung isa pang Duterte in charge? So if there's a problem with DepEd, what about the 6 years under the other Duterte? What about that? You know what I'm saying? But people don't connect it that way as far as support. People are gonna say, no. Kawawa yung leader. The leader is there to clean things up. Kung may mali, kasalanan ng mga underlings na yan. So, this is a political culture anthropology situation, mga kameta. This is something else. This is not what some people understand as modern politics. Because in modern democratic politics, citizens are supposed to rate their leaders based on how they lead institutions. What are they doing in concrete ways to make the institutions better? Now, in fairness, supporters of both Sara Duterte and Marcos could argue that, well, they're doing a lot. Maybe we're not appreciating it. Maybe they're not getting as much credit. Or maybe we need more time before they bear fruit. But nevertheless, mga kameta, ito yung nakikita natin. The cabinet gets the blame. The undersecretaries, assistant secretaries, institutions get the blame, but not the top leader. It's a very interesting, it's a very peculiar, I would say, Filipino thing, right? Or at least, it's a very developing country situation kind of thing, right? But again, speaking of charismatic leadership, I'll give you another example. Donald Trump, for instance. If you look at Donald Trump in terms of performance, how many elections he lost again? He lost the midterms in, what was that? 2018? He lost the midterms for Republicans. 2020, he lost himself. 2022, super underperformance of the Republican Party. But they didn't blame Trump. they blame the leadership of the Republican National Congress, the RNC. So I think Trump shows that in even established democracies, charismatic leadership trumps what you expect from voters, which is to follow performance-based legitimacy or performance-based assessment of their leaders. All right? So whether this is in the Philippines or in the US, this kind of charismatic leadership situation thing is increasingly a universal phenomenon. Many people are thinking, oh, and Trump keeps on losing, and yet he still has very passionate support base. And if we look at mga kameta, mga latest na lumalabas na numbers, Trump by far is leading, and he's set to become the next Republican candidate if current trend lines hold. So all I'm saying, mga kameta, is something very interesting, something very sociological is going on here. This is about charismatic leadership. This is not about modern performance-based politics, all right? That's the other thing we have to keep in mind, mga kameta. So, if you look at it, the other way of looking at it is, well, how do we really assess if a leader is really good, right? So, we know that the biggest issue for voters is actually inflation nowadays. That's based on the most urgent issues that came out by Pulse Asia, right? And we clearly see, mga kameta, that there's a lot of dissatisfaction with that. So we have a weird situation whereby there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the most urgent, important issue for the people vis-a-vis government, and yet the leader of that government still has high approval ratings. So how to make sense out of this, right? Yan ang interesting sa ating politika. So that's why I'm saying, yung attacking Pulse Asia, that's not the right way forward, mga kameta. You have to really understand the psychology of voters and supporters. You have to understand the power of charismatic leadership, of branding. But I'll tell you something even more important, mga kameta. One thing I've been mentioning, so I mentioned this, for instance, in my journal article. One second. Journal of Democracy. So I discussed this. I call it the politics of discipline. All right. And this is where what you can see is that it's not only that we have charismatic leadership under the Marcos and Duterte brand, it's also that the Filipino people at this point in time find that type of leadership most charismatic and most appropriate for the country. So I explained that in very much in academic detail, etc. dun sa journal article natin for Journal of Democracy. So please feel free to check that out on your own. All right, one second. Ba't di na-connect? Ayusin ko lang to, ha. 1 second. Oops. Ayusin ko lang tong charger natin. Na-disconnect kasi. Talagang low budget talagang style na. Ayan, low budget. Okay. Ito. Alright, ayusin natin. Okay. So, saan tayo sa lecture natin? Alright? That's the power of charismatic leadership. Now, brings me to level 3 of analysis, which is what I call the politics of discipline. I discussed that in my journal article, and I want to expound more on that, God willing, in more extensive works. Now, this is what I've been saying, mga kameta. One of the other problems is that it seems a lot of our folks are not understanding the political zeitgeist and what Filipino voters are looking for. Remember, I explained this to you multiple times in the past to explain the result of the elections and to also explain certain developments in recent months. Again, if you look at the Pew survey, this is not local institution, this is international survey, Pew survey based in the United States. Look at how few of Filipinos are fully committed to liberal democracy, only 15%. 12% are clearly for authoritarian systems, so more or less the same, but almost 7 out of 10 Filipinos are open to any kind of system, including an authoritarian leader, right? Now, just to put things into context and how troubled the Philippines is, so look at the numbers, for instance, in other countries. Look at how low is the commitment to democracy in the Philippines. So in places like Sweden, it's 52%, 48% in Germany, 47% in Netherlands, 44% in Greece, despite all the crisis problem, their history of dictatorship, authoritarianism, 37% in Italy, despite the history of fascism, the failure of the systems. In France, a country in constant political polarization, the number is 35%. Even in Hungary, a very, very problematic situation, country that we have, it's at 18%. Philippines is at 15%. That's just the number of committed people to democracy. So you look at it, we're actually not too far from other troubled democracies or non-democracies even. So we're very similar to Indonesia and to India, and we're not too different from Vietnam, which is not a democracy in any strict sense of the word, right? And not even too different from Russia. So if you look at the surveys, mga kameta, that shows that there's a lot of appetite for authoritarian leadership in the Philippines. What is the reason? Maraming reason dyan. Again, in-explain natin yan. Yung kakulangan or perceived kakulangan ng mga post-Marcos leadership. Not to mention all the fake news and disinformation against Aquinos. Not to mention actual shortcomings of liberal reformers when they were in power. And not to mention the lack of a substantial improvement in the basic living conditions of the Filipino people. Right? Average Filipino people. Maybe a lot of you, mga kameta, there have been enjoying good time, especially when Aquino brought economic stability and growth. But for vast majority of Filipinos, per capita income have not significantly increased over the past 2 or 3 decades. In fact, the Philippines has had one of the slowest growth in per capita growth, income growth, per capita income growth in the past century among all major emerging developing economies in the world, right? Forget about Asia, right? But in the world. So when you put those three things together, first, there's a honeymoon aspect, so it's actually not very unique. Second, what I call asymmetrical accountability, which is blame the underlings, blame the institutions, but not the leaders. And third, mga kameta, the prevalence and growing dominance of authoritarian populism and what I call disciplinary politics. When you put all of those things together, mga kameta, hindi masyadong surprising some of these numbers we're seeing. Now, you're free to go there into some echo chambers and say all of this is fake. Everyone hates these people. They love us. Blah, blah, blah. Go ahead. You want to go to that alternative universe? It's your choice. You want a proper analysis, looking at the data, look at the facts, look at surveys by all institutions all around the world, including Pew Survey in Washington. Then you came to the right place, mga kameta. You see, change comes from recognition of facts. And from recognition of facts, you push for a better future. But if you don't want to recognize facts, if you want to go for conspiracy theories, if you don't want to do a proper sociological and political analysis of the situation, of the psychology of voters, then good luck sa atin. Alright? Now, yes, I think Eden has made a good point about the issue of democracy. My sense is in the Philippines, when you say democracy, I think a lot of people, they're just looking at elections. When you talk about real democracy, you're talking about rule of law, you're talking about institutional checks and balances, you're talking about real political parties, you're talking about many, many indicators, many, many factors that perhaps are not as appreciated in mainstream political discourse. And this is the kind of situation we have right now. Kaya nga sinasabi ko, mga kameta, one thing we have to do is to push for a proper understanding among our kababayan of what a true democracy is and help them realize unless we get a true democracy and unless we get over our infatuation with, we're going to be in trouble. You see, we had a dictator back in the day, 20 years in power, and it was in that 20 years that the Philippines was napag-iwanan ng big time. Philippines in the 50s, mga kameta, had the second highest per capita, but still a very poor country. Philippines was still okay by the early 1960s. By the 70s, late 70s, and by the early 1980s, baksak na yung Philippine economy totally. Alright? These are facts. Alright? So please do some research on your and push for that. Anyway, thank you very much, mga kameta. I hope yung mga nandito, hindi kayo na-hurt because I suppose you were, again, marami naman mga bloggers dyan or journalists or whatever who are gonna give you emotional succor by saying, lahat yan fake, i-deny natin lahat yan, okay, go ahead, that's your choice. But when you come to my vlogs, when you're talking to me, this is what I'm going to give you. Data, analysis, authoritative studies. Boom. Alright? Maraming salamat, mga kameta. Thank you very much for that. speaking of fish, now I think I have to write something about this. I'm gonna make some tweets about it. Let's see more discussions about it. But it is what it is, mga kameta. You have to, if you want to change the world, you have to first understand what the world is all about and then change it from there. Denialism, self-delusion, echo chambers, none of those things are gonna help us. All right? Okay? Thank you very much. Let me just say thank you. Maraming salamat sa... Ay. Alright, sorry, I just had to respond to some of this. Magpasalamat tayo. Thank you again, as always. Maraming mga supporters dito sa atin. Let me just say thank you, sorry, etc. For being there for me, especially nung bata ako, nung super cute ako, pero at the same time spoiled and bratty and all of that. Maraming salamat, ate, for being there, and God bless you, and my prayers and love for you, ate. Thank you very much, ate Justin. God bless you. Yan, shoutout natin si ate. Shoutout natin ulit si ma'am, si Tita Nenet. Baka hindi tayo narinig last time. Alright, thank you very much again kay Riza Traversin for joining us. Kay Riza Oraya, Riza Nympha Arroyo, Noemi Tablare, Madrigal Heya, kay Ma'am Jocelyn Lomberi, thank you so much for your support. Kay Ma'am Eden Olonan, thank you so much for your support. Kay Kat Rodriguez also, thank you so much for your support. Ayan, dami mga nagmamahal sa atin. Pasensya na mga kameta if sometimes I'm not reinforcing some echo chamber ideas there. Anyway, I know there are other journalists and vloggers, whatever, out there who can come up with their own sarcastic comments about Paulsatia, whatever. Okay, go ahead. Enjoy them. But you want real analysis, come here. Alright, and if you're here, you're in the right place, mga kameta. Thank you very much. God bless and talk to you soon.